Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTB World. Today on our show, we'll be talking about not one, rather quite a few notable developments as we did see them emerging in the year 2024. We'll be talking about the year 2024 in review and how we did see it actually, setting a benchmark in terms of Pakistan's education system, in terms of Pakistan's healthcare system, and generally in terms of a society too. In this regard, one thing which was extremely important in this year is the fact that, for the first time we actually had, Pakistan's first ever female chief minister, Mariam Nawaz Sahiba. In this regard, we'll also be talking about the impact of having such women leadership. How did it overall impact, women rights and of course women empowerment in Pakistan, so to speak. Whereas of course we do appreciate that, not one, rather quite a few initiatives were taken under her, of course, very women-led and of course female-centric leadership. What we do need to then analyze is that what more are we then looking forward to in the year 2025. In this regard, we'll also be talking about, generally the 26th Amendment to the Pakistan's Constitution, which overall has had a monumental impact when it comes to analyzing how it actually impacts Pakistan's not only judicial but overall political landscape too. Moving on, we'll also be shedding light upon, of course, not only one, rather quite a few developments as we did see them emancipating both in Pakistan's education as well as in its healthcare sector. How overall we generally now see the education system to be more inclusive and more accessible to all, and especially when it comes to Pakistan's healthcare system, that if we are to overall view it, that what are the advancements that we've made in that regard to that too in this particular year. Last but not the least, we'll also be talking about Pakistan's ever booming, ever vibrant and of course extremely dynamic fashion industry. How 2024 has been that one year where we've generally seen more and more people from the fashion industry actually endorse and embrace sustainability. Is that a trend that will actually carry forward in the upcoming year too? That is also something upon which we'll be shedding light today. This and much more, that too with an extremely diverse, rather a very eminent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Mr. Ian Riley. He is the head of school and an IB specialist. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Alongside him, I have Ms. Huma Ijaz. She is a legal and policy expert. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting.
You're most welcome. My third panelist for today's show is Ms. Mariam Shams. She is a wardrobe solutions specialist. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Walaikum
You're most
assalam.
welcome. And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Dr. Rana Jawad Asghar, who is an expert on global health alongside being an expert on infectious disease too. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
In 2024, we are taking significant strides towards progress and inclusivity in key areas. The education sector is being transformed through inclusive approaches, infrastructure development, and a special focus on empowering girls through education. Policy reforms like the 26th Amendment and MFLO are advancing equity and legal empowerment, creating a fairer society. Leadership and empowerment shine brighter as gender-focused policy-making paves the way for inspiring female representation across all sectors. Sustainable fashion trends for 2024 such as upcycling, thrifting, and minimalist wardrobes are redefining style while promoting environmental responsibility. Healthcare initiatives are also gaining momentum with innovative treatment programs, improved child nutrition, and proactive measures to address emerging challenges. Together, we are building a future that champions equity, sustainability, and empowerment for all.
Welcome back from the report. Now to get the conversation started with you, sir, when we do talk about 2024, an extremely important development which we did see emerging more particularly in this year was the fact that when it comes to education, we saw the Prime Minister declaring an education emergency with the aim of bringing 26 million out-of-school children back into school. Now in this regard, we did see that a task force was formed, and then of course we did have international partners on board too, so as to facilitate a practical implementation of this very task. But when it comes to analyzing that how effective has this educational emergency with regards to bringing all these children back into school, how would you comment on that particular issue?
Well, I think one thing I would like to remind the viewers is that, of course, Pakistan has signed up for the SDG goals. And one of the SDG goals is to provide quality education for all. Now, we're all well aware that, so many children in Pakistan have been out of education for such a long time. I think the partnerships with the likes of Microsoft, etc., with the Bill Gates Foundation have been absolutely fantastic to actually bring the outer regions of Pakistan into education. And what we're seeing now is just developing, in different provinces, with Mariam Nawaz here with us as well. So I think the task force they have set up, and I know because I work with one of them, it's actually really helping to actually get an inclusive education environment within Pakistan.
Right. And the best thing about the task force particularly is the fact it is very diverse by that virtue too. There are people from different fields, different sectors. All of them are very renowned in their own right. So they are giving in very much needed input that way as well. But when we talk about this with regards to this particular government, do you not feel that at some level, there has been perhaps a greater stress being placed when it comes to improving at least the girl child's access to education? For example, we have had free transport programs in place where it has been mandated to actually facilitate the girl child, even the female teachers. So how would you comment on that particular aspect?
No, I would say that, this government has been very proactive when it comes to the inclusive environment, especially for girls' education. And I think, looking at the country of Pakistan, this is very much the need of the hour as well, because we need to realize that every citizen within Pakistan is equal as well at the same time. And I think this government, through its diverse cabinet, etc., has actually shown that as well.
Right. On which I'll come to you, madam, and I would want you to add to this further. So overall, when we do talk about increasing female leadership, I think in a first we do observe the fact the year 2024 actually witnessed Punjab's first female chief minister being sworn in, which again is a monumental milestone. But when it comes to having that female perspective in our policies, when it comes to overall empowering Pakistani women at large, why do you feel is it so important to have women in such leadership positions, that too not only from a national perspective but also from an international perspective? Because a lot of times we see that just because women are sitting in such important positions of power, they have that ability to give that female perspective, that too in policy making as well.
So first of all, the importance of women in leadership positions and policy making decision is, once they are there, they can make some decisions or policies for the welfare of women who constitute almost half of our population. So their representation should be at least to that extent in every policy making boards, in cabinet, whether it's a provincial cabinet or it's a federal cabinet, it only makes sense. Even assemblies, it should be representation there according to population. Look, it's 50%, first of all. Secondly, Pakistan is signatory to the Sustainable Development Goals for the gender improvement, overall performance, in which what they have said that any kinds of protection will be provided to them. But a lot of women die during childbirths. The health factor is missing. Then also empowerment to women by giving them education, which obviously brings us to the Prime Minister's goal that every child should be educated. But the problem is that in a lot of households, in poor households, they will educate the boys and not the girls and make them stay at home and do housework with the mother. And it happens in most of the villages. So we are right now standing at 3.2. By 2030, it requires Pakistan to be 2.8 child per family. So this is where women's health comes in, and their health is very compromised. So we're talking about all stratas of society, from the poor to the lower middle class to the upper middle class, where they're working women too, and their rights to work environment and their rights as per being in the policy making boards, as you said. As you very well know, that there is now a law in every province where women are required to represent on all the boards of the government, up to 20%. They should have that representation.
On which I'll come to you, and I would want you to add to this further. We have seen that in the year 2024, there have been very different kind of trends. There has been a mix and match when it comes to fashion. There have been some things which have been soaring high. For example, we generally now see Pakistan's fashion industry embracing sustainability. But on the other end, we also see there are some people who might be completely averse to it as well. well. So overall, when it comes to analyzing the most prominent fashion trends, that too in the year 2024, how would you make that evaluation?
I go by Mariam Mizaji, so I wear different hats, guys. I'm also an economist, by the way. But when I do my wardrobe solution specialist parts, I call myself Mariam Mizaji. And I say, I'm Mariam Mizaji, and I'm a proud outfit repeater. I think we need to normalize outfit repeating. So for a certain demographic of society, buying clothes, making clothes, there is no cap on it. And interestingly enough, I'm sorry to be throwing facts, there is a drive, there is actually a cap at how many pieces of garments should a particular individual own. The whole drive towards capsule wardrobes, the whole drive towards, the new luxury item is actually quiet luxury and sustainability. So that trend in the upper segments of society where clearly spending is not an issue, clearly following trends is not an issue, that needs to be plugged in there. The second segment of society that I would like to talk about, especially pertaining to winter, is that needs to have access to sturdy winter wear. And for that, the market that needs to be rejoiced and completely celebrated is the thrifting market.
Right, basically, not only thrifting, but generally repurposing of clothes too.
Yes.
So there has been a very clear shift in that regard.
There's been a clear shift. Social media has a very big role to play in it because there's a lot of, internationally, I think we all know it. Interestingly enough, in our own lives also, we've always been very, I don't know whether proud wearers of hand-me-downs, but we've always had that culture of repeating. Upcycling is a very new word.
Right.
However, upcycling has always been going on. Our grandmothers used to upcycle and they used to redo outfits to make them more current. The whole thing is it's happening sporadically. It's not happening at a level where it can make an impact.
Right, Ms. Mariam. On which I'll come to you, Dr. Saab, and my first question to you in this regard would be, overall, we have seen that Pakistan has faced not one, rather quite a few health challenges, that too particularly in this year. For example, we did see it reporting cases of brain-eating amoeba, then we had a mpox, that is a monkeypox alert in place being put, and then of course the growing impact of air pollution too. So given your expertise in of course the global health generally, do you feel that Pakistan's healthcare system was able to adequately deal with the same? And when it comes to overall improving it, what are the issues that we should actively prioritize in this regard, be it in terms of improving our disease surveillance, or for that matter even going a step ahead and investing in health intelligence, so to speak?
I think that's a great question. That's true that Pakistan is facing what we call double whammy, that it is facing huge burden of infectious diseases and also increasing burden of chronic diseases. And that's a difficult situation for any health system to cope. Coming back to the infectious diseases, the one major reason of this huge number of infectious diseases is our lack of sanitation and lack of clean drinking water. If we can provide just these two essential elements, we can reduce 80% of our infectious diseases burden in Pakistan. And this has been proven in other countries also. This is not just a number from the thin air, but it's an actual proof that by providing clean drinking water, you can reduce 70% to 80% of infectious diseases. Pakistan has some unique diseases which originated from Pakistan or have a higher number of those rare diseases. And as you have given the examples of XDR typhoid, which started from Pakistan, and also the Karachi, which faces brain-eating amoeba. This is a very rare disease, but in Pakistan we have seen a lot more cases than I would say anywhere else in the world. So these are difficult challenges. To manage those, we need to improve our disease surveillance system. And it should not be just like a simple disease surveillance system. We need to start thinking about health intelligence, just like a military intelligence, where you go beyond just simple data collection. Similarly, health intelligence need to expand and include different sectors to predict the next challenges and to give us ways to control those new health challenges.
Right, so your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Ian, and here we must talk about these very interesting kind of nutrition program which have been launched by the Punjab Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz Sahiba, that too particularly at a primary school level, MC1 Indira Hazi Khan. So talking about this from the viewpoint of course, addressing child malnutrition, which directly has an impact on, of course, education and academic performance as well. How do you propose can we make programs like these long-term sustainable? Because a lot would then be required to put them into place and to ensure that, yes, they are maintainable long-term too.
No, I think that's actually a very interesting question indeed. Is sustainable? And I think, again, what we've seen with this current government with the tie-ups with, let's say, Nestle, that, you know, they've made sure that it is sustainable. And it's been shown internationally, you know, that if children are given free milk or free breakfast, which they're doing here, their attention span can last longer throughout the day. Now, at the moment, of course, we're facing a huge brain drain of children from the middle and upper classes who are leaving Pakistan, which is not what we want, right? So therefore, by providing a quality education for all, especially as we are in Punjab, you know, by providing free meals, by providing free buses, safe buses for females, milk for children, you know, it actually makes them more, and I know that my colleagues will talk about this as well, it makes them more academically open,
of course,
as well. With that, you'll then have more of not just the middle and upper class engaged in education, but all, which means they will then stay in the country,
of course,
which will then have a more sustainable benefit on the future of Pakistan.
Because that way then you're overall improving that entire experience of seeking an education as well. And in this yardstick, I think something that I would want to add is the fact that also at some level improvements in the infrastructure as well, because it's just not making sure that people, more particularly girl child, has that access to education, that too in the rural and remote areas. It's also about ensuring that if she gets there safely. A lot of times we also come across parents who might not be very comfortable sending their girl to school just because it's very far off from their own premises. But when we talk about inclusivity, I think this is something that you worked on personally as well, that too with the government. So tell us about the education inclusive programs as you have worked on them, more particularly with the aim of actually including children with special needs in them. And not only that, also for that matter, trans children, so to speak, who might be discriminated against when it comes to education.
This is actually very, you know, I'm very passionate about this. But, you know, for me, with inclusive education and special educational needs, all children should be included. But what I would say with special educational needs is, you know, that under Mariam Nawaz and Noshin Bashir, who's actually the committee lead for the educational special educational needs policy, you know, the draft has just been released a few weeks ago. It's brilliant. And if that actually could be put into place in Pakistan or in Punjab, you would actually see a fully inclusive environment. And I think what Mariam's done, which is very impressive, now she's visiting Shanghai Experimental School, which I know very well because I worked in Shanghai for 11 years. You know, and it's a very, very progressive school, you know, for special educational needs, for that acceptance, which of course 10 years ago China didn't have, but now they do. And, you know, I will say that, yes, we started investigating special educational needs under the old Murad Draz education scheme, but now it's actually one that they will start implementing from the start of next year. So great changes coming up. Having Mariam Nawaz currently in Shanghai, visiting Shanghai Experimental School, I worked in Shanghai for 11 years, so I know how quickly Shanghai's developed, you know, and it's a great model to go and have a look at, to bring it back, to continue to push the education growth.
So these are the things that we should ideally work towards in the year 2025.
Absolutely.
Right, so your point is noted. Coming towards you, Ms. Hema, and I would want you to add to this very interesting aspect of law on which you personally have been working upon. So we do understand the fact that a law has been put forward with regards to giving women an equitable share, that too in matrimonial assets post-divorce. And this in itself is a novelty in Pakistan, because we do understand that this was something which was never there before. So how do you propose, rather how do you foresee this law actually making its way through the parliament, and then of course not only making its way through, actually being accepted by the Pakistani society too?
So this is the start. it's going to be a long journey, I must say, because we will face opposition. So, as you said, how will Pakistani men accept it? Interestingly, Fatma, it was the men who encouraged me to bring it. Because I keep saying that it's not only the women who are affected, there are men in that family who get affected with that woman. They are fathers, they are sons, they are also the brothers, so they feel helpless in you know, looking at the misery of their female folks. So it's not that all men are against it, but yes, it is a mindset change. It's going to take time. And right now it is in the compliance committee, C2 committee in the Senate, and they are looking at it for making it Islamically compliant. There's nothing which is anti-Islamic in it, because Islam, as we say, is a religion which says that when you part from the women, look after them well. And it's the state's duty to ensure that they're looked after well. And how does a state ensure? Through passing such laws. And it's equitable, because as I said, that the mindset needs to change. You know, women and men, a man and a woman, husband and wife, are partners.
Of course.
So whatever they're making together is actually they're putting in both efforts together.
Right.
In everything, every home that they make, everything that they make.
We definitely would need mass sensitization. We would need community outreach.
Yes.
We would also need to engage at some level, maybe religious leaders too, because this is not an issue that we are looking at from the viewpoint of religion only, but also the society and the socio-cultural norms. So there has to be a more holistic approach with regards to that implementation. Let the law get through, then we'll come to that stage as well.
But it's a beginning.
Of course.
Remember, so the journey has to be done together, and the journey has to be done by representation from all stratas of society.
Definitely, I would agree with you on that. Coming towards you, Mariam, here I would want you to also comment upon the most notable trends that you did see in the year 2024 when it comes to men's fashion, because a lot of times we see when we talk about fashion, the discussion somehow happens to be centered around women's fashion and what women like to wear. Somehow I feel men, unfortunately, they are ignored, and this is despite the fact that over a period of time, you would agree with me on that, wouldn't you?
Services then.
Because you see, men have, at least in the past few years, become very fashion conscious that way too, especially younger men. So how would you comment on that aspect? What have been the ins and outs of, you know, of men's fashion, that too in this year?
Okay, the one thing that I think trends-wise, what is in and what is out, what is definitely out is judgment. So I think, and that's where the perception, I mean, it's so interesting that I'm sitting here and I'm listening to them and I'm trying to make sense of whatever it is that I have to say as somebody, you know, I think everyone is aware of the fact that having a well-curated wardrobe brings dignity to their life.
Definitely.
And that dignity index is, so that awareness is pervasive in all demographics. Since you specifically asked about the male wardrobe, I think we're underestimating them. I mean, I work in FC College and I'm constantly surrounded by the younger lot, and I'm amazed. The body positivity movement, that's where it's at. The expressing themselves through all kinds of colors and shapes and norms, and the concept of, oh, this trend is in and this trend is out, it's all gone. I think it's just kind of a little, there's a smaller segment of society that's still hung up on, oh, I can't wear this shirt length and I have to wear this shirt length. Otherwise, I would give a lot of credit to the young men out there. There's a lot of fantastic Pakistani designers who are taking trends from the West and making them very applicable to the Pakistani market and at all price points.
Right. We've also seen just last month, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, I remember, more particularly in Riyadh, a lot of fashion designers showcase their entire collections that way too. So I think this year,
yes,
in terms of
modest fashion is in.
Right.
And
in
not
terms of
just
Pakistan's fashion industry's representation abroad, I think that has been very monumental, because it's the first time that Pakistan's fashion designer actually get a chance to represent their work, that too in a country like Saudi Arabia.
That's really true, but I'll tell you a little about modest fashion. One would assume it only has to do with cultural and social and religious norms. No, I think overall, generally, people just feel better covering themselves up. But it's just a more forgiving, flattering silhouette. So interestingly enough, the fashion designers of Pakistan are able to showcase what they're doing with a few tweaks here and there to make it fusion wear. And the brilliant thing is that the kind of trends that the greats of fashion are putting out there in terms of color, in terms of cut, in terms of silhouette, that is diffused into our high street, into our malls, into our stores, and the bigger stores are doing them.
Right. Right.
So there's no disconnect there. And therefore, when a particular designer is able to showcase in a place like Riyadh, for example, there is a market that is very pertinent to their internal indigenous market, and then the international buyers are also there, and they're looking at it, and that is exciting stuff coming up. So
Right.
in terms of the economist in me, oh my God, employment creation, so many orders coming back home. The only issue that I foresee is structural inability of the market to respond.
So basically, then again, I believe that these are issues which would exist as they are and so many other things as well. But when we talk about trends, because this is something I would want the audience to benefit from, like for example, we see that in countries like South Korea, there's this very popular trend of people checking colors against the color of their skin and more particularly their neck, whether it is something that would bring out their complexion or not. So what are the trends that you observe in people, more particularly young people, that too in this year? Do you feel that we have been kind of revamping our typical fashion trends and styling preferences that way?
My clients, for example,
Right.
they always want a human validation, a human negative, a human positive to come in and to be able to say, okay, this looks fantastic, or I feel great. And then they need the feedback to be reverted back.
Right, Mariam. Coming towards you, sir, here I think it's very important to also talk about the Chief Minister's insulin program, which has now registered over 10,000 children with diabetes. How important do you feel is this step when it comes to overall improving children's health and, of course, children's access to the healthcare system as well? And do you not feel, if we are moving into 2025, this is that one program whose, of course, ambit might perhaps also be expanded to adults, because it is a very important program? How would you comment overall on its effectiveness?
I think this is a great initiative of identifying 10,000 kids with diabetes and providing them care and treatment. Uh, I think this on its own is the first time that someone has paid attention to, what we called, people have never paid attention to this, the huge health cost or health impact on children who have early onset diabetes. And it could be very dangerous for children. So having a program in which is focused on that aspect, I think is very important. Adult onset diabetes is, I would say, less dangerous than childhood onset diabetes, because they are young children, they don't know, and it's difficult for them to ensure what they are eating or not. Plus, they need insulin to treat their diabetes. Adult onset diabetes, we can treat them with diabetes with diet, but for the kids, most of them have to be put on insulin, which is hard for them. So I think it's a great initiative, and I would like, instead of including adults, I would say and recommend that expand it to more kids. We cover most of our kids who are having childhood onset diabetes.
Right, so your point is noted. Coming towards you, Ian, I think here we must also talk about the developments that we do see emerging, that too in Pakistan's education system, but more so from the viewpoint of investment in teacher training. So when we talk about teacher training, we do understand that that is extremely important. You can give people access to education, you can make things more inclusive, but if teachers are not well trained, the quality of education will inevitably suffer. So as an educationist yourself, how do you propose can we work towards that? That too in a manner in which we then bring Pakistan's education system in line with that of international standards in the year 2025.
Absolutely. And I think, I currently also work with Beacon House National University, teaching the MPhil students for educational leadership. And, I think one of the mistakes that's been made by many higher educational institutes training teachers is they've actually missed the wrong demographic. So they've aimed for the leaders, but they've missed actually the most important people, which is the teachers that teach the children, right? So I know at the moment there's currently talk with different organisations, including Cambridge and the International Baccalaureate, to actually look at establishing proper teacher training centres at, let's say, Aga Khan University in Karachi, BNU here in Lahore, and also, of course, LUMS as well under Ali Chima. So there's a lot of talk going on about it. And I know, yes, okay, the private schools do a great job Beacon House, City School, you name it, at training their teachers. But we need to actually ensure that that's open to all.
Right.
So this discussion has started, and this is a discussion that will continue into 2025.
Right. But in addition to that, when we talk about overall revamping Pakistan's education system, that too for the better with every passing year, when it comes to revising goals for the year 2025, do you not feel that at some level the education system should be such that curriculum should be revamped to also give due consideration to very important soft skills like that of emotional intelligence, like that of ensuring that children are digitally literate too, because these are those skills which might be very conveniently ignored otherwise?
No, absolutely. So what I've seen in the last year is a shift. So of course, the first time round was the single national curriculum. Now, of course, that went through many different stages of development, with the final one being launched this year with the national curriculum for Pakistan. Now, they have been working with outside organisations, including Leader and Me, which gives the children those leadership skills, those soft skills, and the skills required for the future.
Right.
So that is in development. And I think, if we look at the other, tie-ins, Microsoft, this is also bringing in different skills, including AI, coding, to all, not just the middle and upper class.
That is great. So inclusivity in its truest sense.
Absolutely.
Right, sir. On which I'll come to you, Humayun. Here, another very important constitutional development that we must, of course, give due consideration to is the fact that, we did see 2024 giving us Pakistan's 26th Amendment to the Constitution. This in itself has had different kind of responses. Introduction of Article 9A in Pakistan's Constitution, that is a very important milestone, because for the first time we now do get a right to clean and healthy environment, that too being explicitly stated.
Yes.
But overall, if you were to then comment on 26th Amendment, as you do see it as a lawyer, what kind of implications will it then have on Pakistan's legal system, on the judicial, and of course on the political landscape?
First of all, when people start criticizing amendments, amendments are important because times are changing. So we have to evolve the constitution. We have to keep moving with the times and keep evolving and keep making it more efficient and making it more relevant to the 21st century to start with. And secondly, yes, as you said, that this was one of the most important amendment, because we, as you know, we have sustainable development goals, we have climate change related goals that we have to meet by 2030 by reducing fossil fuel, by improving the pollution. Well, we're sitting in Lahore, so we're the most polluted city, by the way, on no account of us. And they're bringing in these green funds, and they're bringing green jobs, 200,000 green related jobs. And then also the third world country who are suffering on account of pollution by the first world countries, they have also asked for financial aid and compensation for that, so that they can also empower, they can improve the health environment around. They can do all these, these environment related goals are going to be very costly.
Right.
So, if you want to, for example, industrialization, you want certain equipment to be installed, the government needs funds for that. Similarly, when we come to crop burning, as they say, in crop burning also those farmers need, it's expensive for them to do away with the waste. So one thing is this, the important thing again in that amendment was just not there was obviously judicial, as you know, that all the performance of High Court judges will be evaluated, which is a very good criteria.
The tenure of the Chief Justice will be fixed,
tenure of Chief
and the way
Justice,
he will be appointed will
and
be
then constitutional courts came in, that all the constitutional related petitions go to that, which makes it, there's a new bench which has been formed, which makes it very efficient for the courts, because what are we looking at? We're looking at that people who go to court, they get timely justice. It's not going to be over 10 years and so on.
Right.
And an important thing in it was also interest free from till January 1st, 2028 is the cutoff date. So we have a interest free economy. So there were a lot of amendments which were included in it, which have not been probably thoroughly studied and which needs to be looked at, obviously. And there will be maybe 27th Amendment, 28th, 29th, will reform the system better.
Right.
Will bring more reforms to not only judicial system, also to the other governance structures.
Right.
It's not necessary that we're going to stick to the same age-old laws.
Constant involvement
It's
that
a
you have to go
constant
through as humans, we do
involvement,
that,
and we should be
the legal
open to
system
it.
must do that, the
Yes.
society must do that at the end
Yes,
of the day.
and we have to be open to it
Generally.
because soon we'll have AI-related challenges.
I'll come to you, Mariam, and here I would want you to comment on this very interesting concept of generally embracing products, or for that matter accessories, which don't come with a cost on the environment. Now, generally we see this has become a very notable trend world over particularly. But when it comes to looking on to the year 2025, do you feel that this is something that will potentially find its way into Pakistan's fashion scene, more particularly when it comes to the younger lot? Because world over we do see that it's the Gen Z which is actually endorsing this trend.
Okay, so the word here that we're looking for is fast fashion. And I'd like to redefine it, because what we think is fast fashion is something that we go pick up a t-shirt from a high street store, which is a certain price point, which is affordable. I, as an economist and also as a wardrobe solution specialist, do not look down upon that particular price point. What I do look down upon is the throwing away of it and the discarding of that. So one thing interesting is that while upcycling is a big trend, what about repair? You know, like those skills need to be re-inculcated. And for us as an economy that is at the juncture where the social skills are much more integrated, it's an easier U-turn to make. We're actually at a better place where we can, and I incredibly support Huma's viewpoint about bring the law, because if you bring the institution in, the formal institution, the viewpoints and the ideas and the sort of attitude towards it all, it will change.
Definitely.
So I think in terms of fashion also, in terms of fast fashion, just we have to inculcate the habit of re-wearing in the second season. Therefore, we need to inculcate, there is a huge responsibility, there's a regulatory responsibility on the supplier. What kind of, so while I'm not going to be judgmental towards polyester or cotton and say, oh, only wear cottons, because polyester, the kind of phenomenal development that's taking place in terms of technological development in polyester is might end up being environmentally friendly. And so what we're looking for is that the kind of material that's being put out there, less is more at this point.
But indeed, that's very rightly put by yourself, Mariam, because in this regard, then of course, we need to construe this from all angles, on which I'll come to you, Dr. Saab, and here we must talk about there being the potential of us going towards international collaboration when it comes to upgrading Pakistan's healthcare system. In this regard, particularly, we did see the Chief Minister reportedly initiating discussions on advancing cancer treatments. So when it comes to using of the latest treatments, the latest technologies, even AI for that matter, in Pakistan's healthcare system, how do you see us prioritizing this in the upcoming year?
I think it's a good thing that CM Punjab is visiting China and discussing the cancer treatment options there, and to bring those technologies back to Pakistan. Pakistan also need to work on how to prevent, how we could prevent increasing cases of cancer, different type of cancers. Again, we don't have any reliable data of cancers happening in Pakistan. There is a very fragmented data or haphazard data which we have on different cancers in Pakistan. But anecdotal reports do tell us that now more people are reporting, with cancer and all types of cancer. And we need to figure that out, that how we can improve the environment, the food supply, so that we could reduce the increasing number of cancers. Cancer treatments are very expensive. And so our strategies, our efforts should be how to prevent cancer.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, sir, and moving towards the end of the show. So my last question to you would be, wrapping up today's conversation, if you are to give some suggestions with regards to improving both the accessibility as well as, overall the quality of learning outcomes in Pakistan with regards to our education system, what would those suggestions be? What are the best international practices that Pakistan can learn from when it comes to improving both the accessibility as well as, of course, the quality of the education system?
I think that's a very reflective question. And I think having listened to Mariam and also to Huma about the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, it's actually very interesting that we all talked about this,
Right.
and yet we hadn't met before, right? So it's very, very clear that Pakistan is in the right direction to actually meet those goals
Right.
through the different amendments, etc., that Huma's talked about as well. Now, when it comes to education, which is my forte, you know, one of the things that Pakistan has been doing is they have been partnering with external companies and external education providers to actually help them build not only their national curriculum, but provide different offerings. So, of course, if you saw Pakistan 10 years ago, it was very much matric, O-level, A-level, that's it.
Right.
Right? So, of course, if you look at the trend now, and somebody I also work with is the International Baccalaureate, which is a much more holistic
Right.
environment. Now, also, the Finnish education system is one of the top education systems in the world, with kids not starting education till the age of 7. So, yep, that's something very different for people to take on. But if you want to look at it more from a cultural perspective, and I can see that our current Chief Minister, Mariam Nawaz, looking at the education system there, you know, the Chinese education system is very, very progressive
Right.
after spending 11 years there, and also the Singapore national curriculum. So if you look currently, the national curriculum of Pakistan, the maths program is based on
Right.
that Singapore curriculum.
Right.
So I think collaborating with many of the strong PISA countries, such as Singapore, China, Hong Kong, South Korea,
Even the European countries for that matter, because we do know that European countries also for one are known for their very perfect kind of an education system. Finland for one, Denmark in that regard.
Absolutely. So Finland, of course, is number one. And actually there's a new curriculum that's come out, which is called the Nordic Baccalaureate, which is absolutely incredible because it brings together not just skills, but also knowledge.
Right.
Because when we were all young, and I'm not saying any of you are old, but you know, we focused only on knowledge, right? So if I ask any of you, what do you remember from school? You'll say the times tables or the teacher I didn't like. That didn't help you in your careers now.
Of course.
It's the different skills that you've learned. So what Pakistan needs to do in 2025 is, you know, partner with innovative companies, both internationally and locally to
too.
provide skills.
They need the collaborations need to be there,
Absolutely.
whether they are nationally or internationally,
Absolutely.
right? So, Homa, coming towards you, and my last question to you would be: I think this is something very exciting. We generally are expecting a floating restaurant to be actually opened up on Canal in Lahore, which will be very amusing for all of us because this is something earlier that we saw in other countries. In Hong Kong, I remember visiting such one restaurant. So, when it comes to initiatives like these, what kind of an impact do you feel can they overall have, not only on our culture, on our environment, and also talking about this from an international perspective, on our tourism per se too?
Yes, so it is very important while we are daily working and toiling and, you know, talking about criticisms and, you know, this is not working, that is not working, to provide entertainment, healthy entertainment to people and people at large, which is not, you know, restricted to somebody who can only afford it, you know, a cheaper but good entertainment like festivals. It adds to the richness of a culture, it adds to the attraction of a city, and it provides a different, a very healthy entertainment, you see.
Of course.
People can go with families, they can take, and you know, it's just a different way. It's just, and it's amazing. I mean, obviously, you know, if we go to Egypt, you go to Cairo, you go to Istanbul, everywhere, they have this entire concept, dinner on the boat.
Given the fact that unfortunately we don't have many ways to seek recreation, it's either going out, having a good dinner, or it's going to cinema. So I think this in itself will also add to our tourist attractions, not only externally but internally
expats
too.
who come back, they look forward to doing something with their families. You know, obviously eating is a very major part of our entertainment and culture and heritage, but you know, doing it in different ways.
Right, madam, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Miss Mariam, and before we conclude conclude today's show. So how would you then comment on Pakistan's extremely dynamic and vibrant music industry? One very prominent trend that we did observe in this year was the fact we generally saw there to be a fusion of different genres of music. When it comes to young people particularly, we did see Qawwali music was very nicely fused in with, more contemporary kind of music sounds. So do you feel as a musician yourself this is a trend which would then continue in the upcoming year as well?
Okay, so fashion and music both act as a vessel for heritage and craft to be taken forward and to be made relevant. The absolutists would disagree with me on this because they want to preserve that craft and that qawwali or that heritage or that poetry in its absolute original form. But the only way to take it forward would be that it is fused, it is given its due respect. Without that due respect, it would not, and that's where the senior musicians come into play. The beautiful thing is that there's so much excitement happening in music right now. And post-COVID, concerts have come back in again. There's a lot of employment generation. Production has taken a whole new different genre altogether because of AI coming in. In all of this, because I'm half glass half full, and an educationist, I'd like to believe there's opportunities and pockets to grow. And it will require an overhaul of thinking, mostly by people from our demographic. So as you said, Gen Z is on trend, Gen Z is on point. They're going to take the challenge head on. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about me, for example. I need to be able to actually change myself, evolve the thinking that is there. And the best part is that a lot of information is available online. We don't have any excuses now for not being able to connect with our heritage, not being able to connect with our indigenous roots in a manner that is relevant and pertinent and fun.
And what's very important to then, of course, talk about the reason why I mentioned Pakistan youth is the fact we can't generally ignore the youth because the youth does comprise, majority of Pakistan's population that way. I think one very positive trend which we do see, emerging in Pakistan's music industry, then being endorsed by Pakistan youth is the fact that now they are very proactively perhaps endorsing message-driven content. They are somehow advocating for the social causes, even for that matter being more politically aware because of music too. So you can't ignore music's impact on the society or its potential impact on the society, or even for that matter on the political landscape in that regard too. I'll come to you, Doc Saab, and before we wrap up today's conversation, my last question to you would be, wrapping up today's conversation, if we are looking towards the year 2025, what do you propose as a healthcare expert, that too on global and of course public health, should be both our long-term as well as our short-term goal when it comes to overall improving Pakistan's healthcare system? And do you not feel that when it comes to overall revamping the healthcare system, there are external factors that we'd also need to look into in this regard, be it, for example, ensuring that there's proper family planning, be it, for example, ensuring that there's no environmental pollution, because all these things, one way or the other, are adding to the disease burden, so to speak.
As I always say, that Pakistani healthcare system improvement is not going to come through the improvement in the health system. If we have our population increasing day by day, no amount of investment in healthcare system would be able to cope with our increasing number of population. So number one is to ensure you have a good family management system or family planning system. And number two, as I said, the other major initiative should be to provide clean drinking water to our population and improve the sanitation. And if we could do those three things, we will have a great health system with very few infectious diseases. As I said earlier, decrease of 70 to 80% of infectious disease disease burden. That will improve the capacity and give them some space to our health system to focus more long term on other diseases like chronic diseases. So I would say these three initiatives are outside health sector. Inside the health sector, I would say focus on disease surveillance system. If you don't have a reliable data, how could you fight a war against bacteria, viruses, and other health issues? So you need to have a good health intelligence to have a good health system which can effectively use resources to ensure that a good quality health for all Pakistanis.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which note I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Homa. Thank you so much, Ms. Mariam. And thank you so much, Roxa, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the year 2024 as we did see it evolving in Pakistan. In this regard, we spoke about not one, rather quite a few healthcare developments that we did see. We also spoke about how generally we now see Pakistan's education to be more, overall inclusive and definitely more accessible, that too particularly for the girl child. With regards to the most prominent constitutional legal developments, we do understand the fact that 2024 was that one year where 26th Amendment to Pakistan's constitution was actually passed. Amongst other things, of course, one thing that we do need to give due appreciation to the fact is the fact that, of course, Article 9A of Pakistan's constitution, which for the very first time gives everybody of us a right to clean and sustainable environment, was actually then explicitly put into the constitution by this very amendment. When we talk about women empowerment, with regards to that, we do feel that this year was that one year which was extremely monumental, from, of course, Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz actually being sworn in as Pakistan's first female Chief Minister of Punjab. We generally did see that, in her leadership, there were not one, rather quite a few initiatives taken, both to socially as well as to economically empower women. If we generally want to carry this momentum forward, then we as a society need to collectively work to do just that. Pakistan's media in this regard needs to step in as well. It needs to very proactively talk about social issues and do it in a manner which is then, of course, not only constructive but equally responsible too. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.